We'll let our ambassadors get seated. Well, good morning and welcome to our hometown hero presentation. And I think everybody here knows my name. I'm Mary Ellen Welshon, and I'm superintendent at both Hoxie Community Schools and Golden Plains Schools. Well, it is my honor to welcome you all to today's events, where we will have the pleasure of hearing from our special guest, our Hoxie's very own astronaut, Colonel Tyler Nick Hague. Before we start, though, I would like to make a few acknowledgments and introductions. First of all, we want to thank NASA for granting permission for today's appearance, and the planning committee who worked with us diligently to plan this whole day and have put together all of today's activities. And we have what we believe will be definitely a full and wonderful day for Nick and his family. I'd like to thank our hosts who have helped with this event and supporters, and that includes Sheridan County Community Foundation, Scott and Michelle Foote family, Foote Cattle Company and Oscars, the City of Hoxie, and the Sheridan County Commission for helping make Nick's visit possible. I'd like to introduce some of the people in the audience, and I would like you to stand to be recognized. First of all, okay, Bev, Don and Bev Hague. You have to stand. It's Nick's parents. You have to. Don served as superintendent, and I think it was from 1989 to 2001, and Bev taught in, third grade and middle school social studies, I think from about that 1990 through 2001, right? So all of us who had and knew them when they were here think they were the best. So Nick's kind of the best too. I just have to say this, I did watch Nick grow up. Right? I did. And look at what a wonderful young man he turned into. We also have today one of our Hoxie City Commissioners, Kevin Schoendaler, with us. He will be doing something here shortly. But most of all, I am so proud of all of you, and thank you for being here. At this time, I would like Kevin to come up. He has a presentation he would like to do on behalf of the city.
Thank you, Mary Ellen, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. My name is Kevin Schoendaler, and I am the City Water Commissioner for Hoxie. It is my distinct honor on behalf of the city government and the residents of the city of Hoxie to welcome NASA astronaut Colonel Tyler Nick Hague back home today. We are truly grateful that your travels, which have literally taken you out of this world, have brought you home to us today. It's a great honor to bestow upon you a key to the city of Hoxie in recognition of your heroism as a member of the armed forces on this Veterans Day, as well as your unbelievable service to our nation and world as an astronaut aboard the International Space Station. Your community watched in awe as you traveled into space, entered through the hatch, and were welcomed aboard the International Space Station. We enjoyed the opportunity to visit with you from Earth and remain inspired by you and your work yet today. It is truly humbling to have an astronaut of our own, and we hope that you'll accept this small token of our admiration to you, as well as your family, for your incredible achievements. You are forever a Hoxie hometown hero. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. After Nick does his presentation, he will like to entertain questions, and he will greet you as students. He wants to spend time with you. Unfortunately, kindergartners will have to go to lunch at 10:30, but I'm pretty sure we can get a hold of them later on. Now, I would like to invite retired and longtime Hoxie High School teacher, actually English teacher, Betty James, to the podium to introduce our Hoxie hometown hero, Colonel Tyler Nick Hague. I'm not used to calling him Tyler. Okay, good. Nick was one of Betty's students, and as I recall, he took Betty's picture into space, as well as the lady who taught you Russian, correct? And I think that Nick would tell you that Betty was a very inspirational person in his life and helped him become the person he is today. So Betty, please come forward.
In the fall of 1992, when Nick was a junior at Hoxie High School, I had a new computer program called Illuminated Books and Manuscripts. I was barely competent with the fairly complicated software, and Nick was fascinated with it. He would come to my classroom after football practice and play around with it, and I would look over his shoulder and learn how to do it. He included a recording of himself reading a poem, which was called High Flight by John Gillespie McGee. It opened with these prophetic lines. Oh, I have slipped the surly bonds of earth and danced the skies on laughter-silvered wings. And it closed with these lines. And while with silent lifting mind I've trod the high untrespassed sanctity of space, put out my hand and touched the face of God. Surely Nick's favorite poem was a harbinger of what was to come. After high school, Nick embarked on an education plan and a career that have brought him here today. He took his dreams of flying to the United States Air Force Academy, where he graduated with honors in astronautical engineering, and where he met his wife, Katie, who would travel with him in parallel careers, the couple adding 2 sons to the family along the way. Nick went on to the Massachusetts Institute of Technology for a master's degree in aeronautical and astronautical engineering. From MIT, his trajectory in the United States Air Force began its inevitable climb to his present position. He worked on advanced spacecraft technologies at Kirtland Air Force Base in New Mexico. He attended the Air Force Test Pilot School in California and tested F-16, F-15, and T-38 aircraft. And in 2004, he deployed to Iraq. In 2006, Hague joined the Department of Astronautics faculty at the Air Force Academy, where he was an instructor of other young men and women with dreams of flying. Accepted into the astronaut program by NASA in 2013, Hague completed astronaut candidate training in July 2015. He was the first astronaut in his class to be assigned a mission to the International Space Station. In March 2019, a successful journey took him to space, where he served as flight engineer on the International Space Station for 6 months. Thus it was that Nick, at last, in his own high flight, slipped the surly bonds of earth, put out his hand, and touched the face of God. Please welcome Colonel Nick Hague.
Okay, so I'm going to come down to the floor. I just want to make sure that everybody can still see me. Thank you so much for the kind words. Real quick, we got a lot of students in the room, and there's a few teachers in the room trying to run herd on those students. Students, your teachers have a profound impact on your life that you're not going to fully realize until you're about my age. But right now you have the opportunity to give them a big hand. So I want you to just cheer as loud as you can for your teachers and say thank you, okay? Okay, so I'm really excited to be here. Driving into town, getting to talk, sitting in the middle of the class, or sitting in the middle of the auditorium and talking to the students, I feel the love of coming back to my hometown, and there's no better feeling in the world. So that's the International Space Station, and I'm going to get to that in a second, and what it's like to be in space, and I want you to start thinking about the questions that you want to ask, because for me, that's the best part, because I get to answer those things that are on your mind and you really want to figure out. But I'd be remiss if I didn't just point out the obvious, right? Yeah. So I graduated a really long time ago, almost 30 years ago, from Hoxie High School. I sat in your chairs. I sat in this auditorium on countless occasions, thinking about the world around me and how things might seem like they're really far away. You know, for me, really far away was, I got to drive to Wichita. My parents have something to do, and they're going to drag me all the way to Wichita. That was a long way away. And then I'd sit in this auditorium, and when I was in high school, we had this thing called Desert Storm, and there was a war in the Middle East, and we'd sit here and we'd watch the live feed from CNN about this thing that was happening on the other side of the planet, and it seemed as far away as possible. It's like, how does that relate to me? How could I have an impact like that on the world? How could I be part of that thing that's so big? It seems like it was out there and I was here on an island in Sheridan County, in Hoxie, just kind of in our own little bubble. And I couldn't have been more wrong. The world, it's all connected, and you're part of it. And you have the opportunity to pursue your dreams, whatever they may be, to pursue them and make them a reality. But there's one secret. And I want every kid in here to be as quiet as they can so they can hear the secret to success. You will never be successful by yourself. It always takes help from somebody, because we're always going to make a mistake. We're always going to stumble. We're always going to fall. We're always going to have something that I just can't figure out. But I'm going to have a friend or a brother or sister or parents or grandparents that know the answer, and they can help me. And so it's that family, it's the friends, it's the team, it's that togetherness where we figure out how to be better than we can be by ourselves. So right now, you've got this community in here. All the ingredients to be successful are in this room. You just have to be willing to help your friend, and you also have to be willing to ask for help when you need it. That's it. That's the secret. And then just never give up on your dreams. All right, so I never gave up on my dreams. That's me floating in the Japanese laboratory on the International Space Station. That seems like a lifetime ago. It was only about 3 years ago, though. I mentioned that we stumble and we fall. So let's talk about my first trip to space. So this is me on the other side of the planet in Star City, Russia, where I'm taking exams. I'm still taking tests and I'm over 40 years old, but I took my test so that I could fly into space, and I passed, thankfully. Lots of instructors. And so there's Alexei Ovchinin, a Russian cosmonaut. He's the commander of my crew. There's a crew of 2, Alexei and I, and we're getting ready to check out our suits and strap into our rocket and launch into space. I've been training for this my whole life. Really, I've been preparing my whole life, but I've been training specifically for this mission for 2 years. And so there we are on the Kazakhstan steppes, climbing into a Russian Soyuz rocket on a beautiful fall afternoon. And liftoff. It's like being in a really souped-up sports car, like a Tesla in plaid mode, and you slam on the accelerator and it pushes you into the seat, and it just never stops. It's 8 minutes to get to orbit, a little over 8 minutes, going from 0 to 17,000 miles an hour. And so about 2 minutes into this flight, we've used a bunch of gas. We've got external gas tanks that are empty, and we try to get rid of them, but one of them doesn't separate right. It impacts the rocket. You can see it there in the lower left-hand corner, sends us out of control, and the escape system pulls us to safety. And what was supposed to be a 200-day mission ended up being a 20-minute flight, where we coasted up to the edge of space and then landed back down a few hundred miles away from where we took off. So one of the things we do is we train for all the things that could happen. And so we had trained for this. You never expect it to happen, but you train for it to happen. And so when the rocket explodes underneath you, you know what to do. So when I think back, there's 2 kind of pictures that crystallize, I think, the lesson that I already tried to hit home, and you'll hear me talk about it multiple times. It's this idea that we don't do things alone. So here is a picture of Alexei and I sitting out in the middle of the Kazakhstan steppes, which looks a lot like Western Kansas, by the way. So it felt like I was at home. And we're sitting there, and when we landed the capsule, there were 3 pararescue jumpers. So the three guys in parachutes jumped down to help roll the capsule into the right position and open the hatch and pull us out. They weren't expecting us to land. So the normal team that's there, the cast of hundreds of people, weren't there. It was just these 3 guys. And so there we sat on their parachute waiting for the rescue team to show up. And Alexei and I were fine. A couple bumps, a couple bruises, but otherwise we were fine. And you sit there, but when I look at this picture, there hadn't been a launch failure like that in 35 years. But within 10 minutes of us hitting the ground, they were on the ground there ready for us. And it's just indicative of the team that is always there, always vigilant, always taking care of and prepared for that worst day. And when we needed them, they were there. In fact, one of the pararescue jumpers was talking to us, and he said that my dad did this job his entire career and never, we're launching every 3 months. And he's doing this, ready to come in and rescue. Every 3 months, did it his entire career, and he didn't do it, but he had followed in his father's footsteps, and he was so proud that he was able to do the job when called upon. So it takes a huge team. And it's not just the team that's associated with, Roscosmos or NASA, the space agencies, but it's also the team at home. And so you don't go through a near-death experience like this without the emotional support that you get from loved ones. And so there's a picture of Katie, and that's right after you saw the video of us coming down the stairs off the jet. That's within 6 hours of us having that launch failure and then coming back. And she gives me a hug, and she puts her hand on my chest, and she goes, "Don't worry, you'll get your chance. You'll get there." So even in that moment where she had just witnessed me, and lived in limbo for 30 minutes not knowing what had happened to me, just knowing that the rocket had come apart, at that moment, a few hours later, she's already committed to, you're going to get your chance. And so what would compel someone to be that way? She loves me. She loves me. She wants to support me in my ambition, but it's also this commitment to this idea that space flight is about something bigger than any one individual. It's a commitment to what are we trying to accomplish. So I got another chance. 5 months later, on a spring evening in the Kazakh steppe, from the same place we launched 5 months before, I got to launch. And this one was flawless, and we docked to the International Space Station. So the International Space Station it's a miracle that it even exists. It took 100 launches, 100 rockets to send up all the pieces so that we could assemble it. You can't build it on the ground because I don't have a way to connect all these pieces. They would collapse under their own weight. They're built to exist in a space where it just floats. And I'll talk about floating and how orbits work in a second, but it's as big as a 6-bedroom house on the inside. On the outside, it's as large as a football field. And it's going around the Earth once every 90 minutes. So the way we stay in orbit is we go so fast that as we fall toward the center of the Earth curves away from us. So if you can imagine throwing a football down the football field, if I keep throwing it faster, it goes further before it curves and hits the Earth. If I can throw it 17,500 miles an hour, as it falls toward the ground, the curve of the Earth falls away. And so by going so fast, we stay in orbit. So even though everything looks like it's floating around and going slow, we're all falling toward the center of the Earth together, but we're going forward at 25 times the speed of sound. Very fast. 100 spacewalks to put this together. It's a miracle. And what's more important is that for over 23 years, it's been on orbit. For over 21 years, there's been someone living and working off of the planet continually. So for the little ones in here, anybody under 21, who's under 21? Your entire life, there's always been someone off the planet, working and living. Okay. And we do it as part of a team, an international team. It's the International Space Station. So I've got mission patches on my flight suit here. I've got a mission patch for Expedition 59, and that's on the left-hand side of the screen. You can see the 6 of us up there. Christina and Ann and myself are the U.S. astronauts. Then you've got Oleg on the top and Alexei on the bottom in the center. They're the Russian cosmonauts. And then you got David Saint-Jacques, who's the Canadian astronaut. And we work together. And we're working in that house. Everybody's experienced COVID and being isolated and stuck inside a house. So we're in there for 3.5 months together. And you get to know each other really well. We knew each other really well before we launched. We launched as friends and colleagues, and we landed as brothers and sisters because we knew each other so well. Our lives depended on each other. And then halfway through, Oleg and Ann and David, their time was up. So they came back, and then a new crew launched. And so Drew and Sasha and Luca joined the crew. And for another 3.5 months, we were together. And that's Expedition 60. And then my time was up on orbit. And so Alexei and I, and then in the middle of the picture in the bottom is Hazal al-Mansuri, the first astronaut from the United Arab Emirates. He came back with Alexei and I to end our 7-month mission. And we've been overlapping and changing out crews like that continually for over 21 years. So what do we do other than float? Why do we go to all this effort up there? Why did the world spend like $150 billion to build the International Space Station? It's for the science. We're trying to answer questions. We're exploring. We're trying to figure out about the world around us, about ourselves. And it's amazing what happens when you can take gravity out of the equation. When I can remove gravity from the situation, we find a deeper understanding of how our bodies work, of how the world works around us. Remember I said we're going around the earth really fast, but we're all falling to the center of the earth together. And because we're falling together, gravity really doesn't have a dominant effect because we're all falling. And so we start to see crazy stuff like water floating in front of you in a blob. And then you can do crazy things like take a paddle and push it, and it'll go across the room, and you can push it back, or you float. Your body starts to adapt. The calluses on your feet disappear because you don't touch the ground for 7 months. Your feet are as smooth as your cheek. Crazy stuff happens. And so we're looking at all of those effects. In the upper left corner, we're trying to grow plants. Why would I want to grow plants up there? I need to figure out how to feed a crew that's going to Mars. And I can't pack enough food for a 3-year mission without a really big rocket. But if I can take some seeds and some water, then I can grow my own food, and maybe I can make that work. We have to freeze samples, and so we freeze a lot of the stuff that we do up there, and we put that in as I'm kind of working around clockwise. In the kind of center right, you see this white box up there. Who's heard of a 3D printer? Yeah, it's not crazy. We've all seen them in action or seen videos of them working. This 3D printer is printing human tissue, trying to print organs so that we can use them for transplants on the ground. On the ground, I can't print blood vessels because they collapse when I'm doing them cell by cell. The weight of the vessel just doesn't work. But on orbit, I don't need any support structure. It just kind of floats, and so I can print very delicate structures, and then once they're complete, they have structural integrity. They're strong enough. But until they're complete, they just collapse if you put them under weight. So we're trying to figure out how to do that so that maybe one day I can print hearts. So anybody that needs a heart transplant, I can print their heart on orbit and send it down, and they can get a transplant. We're checking out how our body adapts, whether it's all the way down at the level of DNA, and how do we modify the DNA? How do we look at making better drugs and make them more effective? All the way to down here in the middle, I'm doing an ultrasound on my neck. So I said we're falling toward the center of the earth. Everything's falling together. So think about this. It's easy to think about, say that you and I are floating in space. We're both falling down to the ground together. Now think about your body. What else is floating? Who had breakfast this morning? Your breakfast inside your stomach would be floating inside your stomach. The blood in your body is not being pulled to your feet, it's floating inside of your blood vessels. Now your heart's still pushing it around, but gravity's not trying to pull it to your feet. And crazy things happen when gravity's not trying to pull it to your feet. I can actually strain my stomach and reverse the direction of the blood flowing in my vessels. That might not be a good thing. We're trying to figure that out. So for a lot of it, the astronauts are guinea pigs. We're trying to study what affects the body. But science is the reason we're up there. Luckily, we're close to home, so whenever we need supplies, we can launch them. And this is an example of one of the world's best video games. I'm on the other end of that robotic arm, and we park a supply vehicle up there. This is a Dragon vehicle with cargo inside. It's got food and science and clothes. It's the size of a school bus. We let it sit there, and it floats about 30 feet away from the space station, and I get to reach out like a giant game of claw and grab it with the robotic arm. We train for, I mentioned we train, so I trained for probably 3 years to do that. Practiced all kinds of failures. You know, if this doesn't work, can I make this work? How am I still successful? You practice, you practice, you practice, and then when you actually have to do it, they turn off the controls on the cargo vehicle, and you have 90 seconds to reach out and grab it. And you got one shot. Otherwise, it flies away. And you might not have your food, and you might not have your clothes, and all those science experiments are wasted. And the whole world gets to watch. No pressure. Who plays video games? You guys are training to do this right now. So let your parents know. And then you also might get a chance to go outside and do a spacewalk. This is me outside on my first spacewalk. You get to put on this spacesuit, which is designed, it's like your own little spacecraft. It's got a backpack. The backpack has all the oxygen and water that I'm gonna need. It keeps me safe, it keeps me alive. The only thing that connects me to the space station is a steel cable. You might be able to see that steel cable running in that picture up there, and that's my connection back to the airlock. Other than that, I'm my own little spacecraft, and at some point you've trained so long for this that that spacesuit just kind of becomes your work clothes. And then you're just outside the space station, floating with the space station, working with one of the best views ever. And we don't do it alone. I'm out there with my buddy. We always go out in pairs because you can't be successful by yourself, and you're always going to run into trouble and need a hand. And this is a picture of that team. So that's a picture after our first spacewalk. Ann and I had just gone out. David and Christina had suited us up, got us out safely, brought us back inside, helped us get out of our spacesuits. That's us celebrating. Before that spacewalk, none of us had actually done this together before. None of us had had the experience of doing a spacewalk, one of the most complicated, dangerous things we do on the space station. We were all rookies, but we did it together. And how do we do that? How are we successful doing something for the first time? I mentioned that team. So these are pictures of all the different instructors, and it's not all of them. I couldn't put them all on one slide, but these are the instructors that taught us everything that we need to know. These are the control rooms that are running all day, every day around the world, making sure that we're safe and helping us through all of the procedures, whether they're inside doing science experiments or we're outside doing a spacewalk. There are people sitting in Houston. Everybody's heard Houston, we have a problem. That's where mission control is. There are people sitting in Huntsville, Alabama. That's where all of the science experiments on the US side are run out of. There are people sitting outside of Tokyo, Japan, where the Japanese laboratory is controlled. There are people sitting in Germany controlling the European laboratory. There are people sitting in Montreal, in Canada, that are helping control the robotic arm. There are people sitting in Russia that are helping control the Russian segment of the space station. All told, for the 7 people that are working on the space station, living and working on the space station, there's around 100,000 people on the ground working in all the different things that we need to do in order to support those 7 people up there. It's a gigantic team. But it's a family, and one of the most fun things we would do up there is get to know each other. Teams. What makes a really strong team? Any ideas? This is the interactive part of the, so your hand popped up. What's an idea of something that makes a really strong team? That's okay. You have an idea? No? Ma'am. Friends. Yes. Friends. Think about your friend. Everybody think about your closest friend. Are they exactly like you? No. They're different. And that's the power of teams. My strongest teams have a bunch of people in the team that don't think like each other, that aren't exactly like each other, but that they're different. And what living and working and being able to participate in the space program has taught me is that, in general, it doesn't matter where you come from on the planet. We're all pretty much the same. We may look completely different, but we're all pretty much the same. The things that we care about, friends and family and wanting to provide and support and be there for the people we care about, those are all the same things that everybody else wants to do. So it doesn't matter how different you look, we're all pretty much the same. And if you accept that, then when you bring together people that are very different and have different experiences and backgrounds, you can start to celebrate the differences, because those differences are what make the team stronger. The different perspectives, the different experiences, those differences are important. I want a team where people are from all over, and this is where we could see it. We'd gather around the dinner table, and we'd talk about all those important things in our lives. And they were all the same things: birthdays and anniversaries, and whose cousin had a baby, and who had somebody that passed away in their family. And we'd talk about all these same things that everybody cares about, but at the same time, we'd share each other's food, and I'd try Russian food or Italian food, and we'd share culture, we'd share music. What was my favorite music? What were we listening to? Italian disco music, or were we listening to Russian traditional balalaika and guitar? And it didn't matter. We started to celebrate each other for the differences we had, and that made our team even stronger. So you want to be part of a team that has lots of differences. And they were an awesome team. So I said we lived and worked up there, so what does living entail? Well, I'm floating. And so a big part of what I have to do every day is try to counteract the fact that I'm floating. If I'm floating, I don't have to use my muscles, my bones don't have to support my weight, and if I don't need my muscles, they start to go away. And if I don't need my skeleton to support my weight, it starts to go away. Your body is constantly adapting. Even if you're in your mid-40s, your body is still responding to everything around. So every day for 2.5 hours, I had to work out. Every day. I'd lift weights for half that time, and I'd do cardio for half that time. So the cardio is either running on the treadmill, and you can see it's just a regular treadmill, but we take some rubber bands, and I hook myself to the ground so it pulls me down. And then I can run on the treadmill. If I lift my legs up, like that picture in the center, then I just float above the treadmill. Treadmill still counts the distance, though. Bicycle, it's a regular stationary bicycle. One modification: if you float in space, you don't need a seat. So there's no seat over those pedals. The only thing that is there is a little strap to hold me to the wall so that I don't rotate forward and hit the ground in front of me. And then we lift weights. And it's just like lifting barbells in the gym, only how do you lift weights in weightlessness? So we got really smart engineers, and they figured out if I take a syringe and I plug the end and I try to pull on that plunger, it pulls against a vacuum. And so in front of me, you can't see them, are two giant metal syringes that I pull against a vacuum, and that's how I lift weight. But it takes a lot. And when I landed, I was actually stronger and in better cardiovascular shape than when I took off, because I worked out every day for 7 months. We also do the other parts of living up there. You can see football, I was up there for football season, so they were able to stream up an Air Force Academy football game, and I was able to watch the Falcons destroy Army. There, I was on orbit with Drew Morgan. He's a West Point graduate, so friendly rivalry. Alexei is in the middle. He's in the cupola, that beautiful window down on the world. He's doing a video conference with his family, and so every weekend we'd get to call down to our families and see them on video and talk with them. Haircuts, your hair still grows in weightlessness. The only thing I didn't get trained on prior to launching that I had to do on orbit was give somebody a haircut. And there's nothing more petrifying than somebody going, I've got to do an interview. It's going to be on all the morning shows, on national TV. Can you give me a haircut? Sure. Let's see how well this works. Birthdays, I mentioned that all those normal things of life still happen on orbit, and so we celebrated birthdays as well. I had my birthday on orbit. No candles. Open flames are a bad thing. But the best part of living in space was being able to float over to the window and appreciate the perspective, the vantage point that the station provides of the Earth. You look out the window, and this is just me pointing a camera out one of the windows and taking a photo. And that's the Nile River. The whole Nile River. Thousands of miles that I can see in just one view. The Middle East. The perspective, the size that you can see, you start to realize, wow, I'm only 250 miles above the surface of the Earth. Just 250 miles. On Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, Artemis is going to launch, or it's planned right now. Artemis is going to go to the moon, big rocket to take people back to the moon. This one doesn't have people on it, though. It's just a test. It's going to go to the moon that's 250,000 miles away. The space station's only 250 miles away. So even at 250 miles, I can see so much of the Earth. And in my mind, it starts to make me think of just how small and precious the Earth is. And we're going around the Earth once every 90 minutes, which means we go into darkness or into sunlight. There's a sunrise or a sunset once every 45 minutes, and when the sun goes down, all the stars pop out. And as hard as I tried, I could never take a photo that actually captured as many stars as you could see with your naked eye. The sun would go down and the bright stars would be there, and then as your eyes slowly adjusted to the dark, you'd start to see more and more stars, and you'd sit there for 20 minutes and you'd just continue to see more and more stars until everything was so cloudy, you started to understand the depths and the magnitude of everything that's out there, and then you'd look back down to the Earth, you'd see the glow of the atmosphere there on the Earth, and you'd realize that right there in that thin little sliver is everything that I care about. And there's all this other stuff out there. See amazing northern and southern lights. Or witness the immense power of Mother Nature. So this is Hurricane Dorian. It was a Category 5 hurricane that I got to witness from above. Up there, it doesn't even look like it's moving. We're going by so quickly. It just looks like this fluffy pancake sitting on the atmosphere. But you know that everybody underneath it is in harm's way. Or you might be able to witness the incredible power that humans have to affect our environment. So this is South America, and if you look at the difference in colors over here, you can see the dark shades and the light shades of green. Those light shades of green are where we've cut down forest. And if you remember back to the picture that I showed of the Nile River, where you can see hundreds and thousands of miles in one view, you start to understand that we are able to cut down hundreds and thousands of miles of forest and change the environment. Or you look down and you see home. That's Kansas. Any guesses? No. Wichita. How about now? Up there. Kansas City. Maybe not Kansas, but it's at the top of the picture. Omaha. So where's Hoxie? You know, it took me the better part of 2 months to get a photo of Hoxie from space, because it's out here, right? And how do you find Hoxie? A place where when you grow up, you feel so removed and so small. You're still there. You're still connected to it all. There you are. You got to zoom way in, but I found you. Can anybody make out where we're sitting right now? Can you see the high school in the picture? It's tough, but you can see it. So there's nothing more special than flying overhead and finding it, and after working for 2 months, trying and failing, I finally got that photo. It's like, there it is. There's home. So then after 203 days, as long as 203 days may seem, for the kids in the room, that's like a whole school year. That's how long I was on orbit. But it goes by quick, and at the end, it's time to come home. And so there we are, landing under a parachute, just like I did almost a year. I landed almost a year to the day that I had my first rocket failure. And we landed in the same place, using the same type of equipment, under the same type of parachute, only this time they were expecting us, so there was more people to welcome us. And when I got down, I was able to make a call, and you know, this sense of change of perspective, it was, hey, hon, I'm home. I'm home. I'm sitting on the opposite side of the earth in Kazakhstan, and I felt like I was home, because now I felt like the world was home. And you're part of that. And if there's anything that I can hope you walk away with today, is understanding that you're part of all of it. You're not on an end of it. You're not removed from it, but you're part of it. This is the last picture I took. I was getting ready to leave, and I need to snap one more photo out the cupola, because the cupola is our window down to the earth, because I want to remember what it was like. So I took this just moments before I hopped in the hatch to go ahead and land. And for me, it represents possibility. I mean, there's the earth. We're getting ready to go to the moon and start exploring deeper into space, but there's possibility. There's possibility in this earth for everybody. There's dreams, and you can make your dreams reality. So I'm going to show a video real quick. I know I'm way over time, and we're going to spend, I know there's questions out there. So after the video, I'm going to answer some questions, but I want to show this video to you. It's only like 5 minutes, but I can try to describe what water dancing in front of you looks like, but video is much better.
We accept the risks because we believe in what we are doing. This is an important mission. We are trying to open humanity's eyes, discover new things, make life better on the ground, and push further into the universe.
What's next? Artemis. So that's where we're heading, the moon. So I think just after midnight is the next launch attempt for Artemis on Tuesday. It's like at 1:09 Eastern Time, Wednesday morning. So start asking now, because kids, it's going to be really hard for you to convince your parents to let you stay up till midnight to watch a rocket launch. But it's going to be the biggest rocket that we've launched off the planet. Should be pretty impressive. Okay, before I said we were going to get to questions and answer. Before we get to Q&A, I have something that I want to present to the community. It has some mileage on it, around 93 million miles. But it was pretty special to me to be able to take a piece of Hoxie up there.
Thank you.
And I've got some other stuff to go with.
Okay, and we want to present this to you from the Historical Society Kansas Roots Hoxie shirt. And if it doesn't fit,
I will wear this with a grin from ear to ear. Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, questions. I think there are some prepared questions. We have some microphones to go around. So if you have, tell us how it's going to work.
Kids who have questions, please line up in this aisle, and that aisle over there, and you'll have a microphone.
Okay, so if you've got questions, you're lining up in the aisles. We've got microphones. I know we have more questions than we have time for, so I want you to ask your question, and then I'm going to give you an answer, and we're going to rapid fire, and I'm going to try my best to answer every question that you have today, okay? So once we're set up, okay, I think we've got critical mass, so now let's listen to the question. Maybe it'll answer your question too. Fire away.
My name is Kai Scanlon, and I'm a 5th grader in Hoxie. What went through your mind when your mission was aborted?
When my mission was aborted, the first thing that went through my mind, and it was a fleeting second. So we're launching, the rocket has a failure, and we're pulled to safety, and it all happens because we're going 4,000 miles an hour when it happened. It all happens as fast as you snap your fingers. It was within a second. And so instantly I saw this flashing light, and I knew there was a problem, and I knew that we weren't going to make it to space. But I had trained so much at that point, then I took all those emotions and I put them to the side. And then we focused on doing the procedures and working through as a team to do everything we needed to do to get down to the ground safely. But then once I got down to the ground safely, all those emotions that I put to the side, all the anxiety, all the nervousness, all of that, I could feel just wash over me. You know, it's kind of shock set in. So as much as I want to be superhuman, I'm still human, and I have all those same emotions. And we all have those emotions, and you can only bottle them up so much before you've got to share them, right? And so you've got to deal with them. And it took me a while to come home and deal with my family and talk through everything that had happened, and to talk to the psychological support team and express all of that. So I think it's a really important. I spent some time on this question because it's really important. We all go through hardship. Don't do it alone. Reach out and ask for help and talk to people because they want to talk to you. Thank you for the question. Wait, over here.
How much does the spacesuit weigh before you enter the atmosphere?
Before I enter the atmosphere, my spacesuit, that big one that I did on a spacewalk, weighs about 300 pounds. It's heavier than I am. But when I'm in space and I put it on, it feels like I'm just wearing clothes because it's floating with me. I still feel heavy when I move because it takes a lot of force to stop, but it's weightless. You almost don't even notice. Thank you.
My name is Kason Baker. I am in 5th grade in Hoxie. My question is, describe your favorite experiment you did on the International Space Station.
Favorite experiment? Who knows what DNA is? Yeah, that's like the computer code inside our cells that help them replicate. They make us who we are. So up there, I'm not a scientist, but they trained me on how to use editing techniques so I could change DNA. And so we were up there proving that you could use those techniques to modify DNA so that pharmaceutical companies could look at doing research up there and make drugs to help address problems on the ground. And so we were trying to prove out fundamental things so that maybe in the future they can, make better vaccines. We all want a better vaccine, right, for COVID. So that helps it be possible. Yes?
How are you and others chosen to go up into space?
How are we chosen? Who likes, if I say STEM, who understands what STEM education is? Science, technology, engineering, math. Who likes to study science and math? So I loved science and math. When I was your age, I liked to break things, figure out what made them work and put them back together, maybe put them back together in a little different way. That's called being an engineer. And so that's what made me interested. To become an astronaut, first thing is you have to find something that really makes you excited. Because we pick astronauts after they've already done something else. We pick doctors and scientists and engineers and explorers and pilots, and all of those people did something else. So you have to find what makes you really excited. And then if you do really well at that, and you still want to go to space, then you apply. But one of the key things you need is you need an education. And what we focus on right now is science, technology, engineering, and math. You have to have a STEM degree from college in order to apply. Okay? So you got to do well in school. Listen to your teachers.
I'm Zoe from Hoxie Grade School, and I'm in 6th grade, and I wanted to know, were there ever any situations where you had a problem to solve and fix something or make something at last second while you were on the International Space Station?
Was there ever a problem up there? Absolutely. There were problems all the time, but we worked together to get through them. One of them was in the middle of the night. We're sleeping soundly. All of a sudden, alarms are going off. One of the pieces of equipment on the outside that controls part of our power had failed, and so we lost a quarter of our power on the space station, and things started turning off. And so we had to get up and start running our procedure for how do we make sure that it doesn't lead to a total collapse. It's like a roving brownout in California. We want to make sure that the whole power grid doesn't come crashing down. So we got up and we worked with the ground team and we figured out how to solve it. Thank you. Yes?
What does a sunset look like in space?
What does a sunset look like in space? You are lucky you live here. Let me say that again. You're lucky you live here, because when I got up this morning and I saw the sunrise, did anybody see the sunrise this morning? It was gorgeous. Nice and red, and you get to see it for a long time because you can see so far. That's like what it's like in space, because you can see it here. I don't have buildings and gigantic trees blocking the view. I can actually see that sunrise. And then from space, the only difference is I'm going really fast. So sunrise only lasts 30 seconds, and then the sun's up. It goes too quick up there, but they're beautiful. So you're lucky. You get to see sunrises and sunsets almost like they are from space right here, and you get to see a night sky that's not polluted with lights, that's almost like what you see from space right here. Thank you.
I'm Keely Kincaid in 6th grade from Hoxie. My question is, what things do you do to train for going into space, especially for 6 months?
You have to train for everything, and that's impossible, but you try. So you train for robotics and how to capture a cargo vehicle and how to do a spacewalk. You train for things you might not think about. I launched on a Russian vehicle, so I had to speak Russian to fly in that spacecraft. All the procedures, all the displays were all in Russian, so I had to learn another language. That was probably the most difficult aspect of my training, was learning another language. Who in here is English a second language? Yeah, so English being a second language for you, you're learning English. Let me tell you, that was one of the toughest things I did, was to learn another language, and it's never easy. And for those that don't speak another language, I can't express, it's difficult to communicate the struggle that it is to learn that second language. You understand it far before you're able to communicate it, and then if you can imagine having your thoughts bottled up inside and not being able to express them, it can be extremely frustrating. So for those here that are native English speakers, do your best to try to reach out to your friends that are learning English and meet them on their terms. So when I'm on orbit and I'm talking to Alexei, how do you think we talk? Everybody on the space station has to know English and Russian. So when I'm talking to Alexei, I talk to him in Russian. And when he talks to me in English. We try to see each other from each other's perspective. And we meet each other in the middle. So if you can do that to your friends, we'd all be better for it. Thank you very much.
My name is Bryn Schondaler from Hoxie Elementary, and I am in 2nd grade. If you had to choose a planet to visit, which one would it be and why?
So we're trying to go to Mars. We're going back to the moon so we can figure out how to get to Mars. That's where we want to explore. But you know what my favorite planet is? Right here. Earth. It's pretty special, and when you see it, when you look at the depths of space and then you look here, you start to realize this little island in the middle of the universe. Not in the middle, but it's part of the universe, and all of that darkness and emptiness, and everything we care about is right here. We better do everything we can to make sure we take care of Earth. Thank you. Yes?
Will you have another mission to space?
I sure hope so. Right now I'm working in Houston at Johnson Space Center. I'm part of the Astronaut Corps. I don't have a current assignment to a space mission, so what do I do while I'm waiting? I help support those that do have a mission. One of the vehicles that we're developing right now is the Boeing Starliner. So everybody's heard of SpaceX, I'm sure. They're pretty popular. Boeing is trying to build a capsule, just like SpaceX does, to launch astronauts to space. And I'm helping them test that out on the ground and develop that so that we can have another way to get astronauts to space. Thank you.
What was your job in the science lab in space?
My job, in general, I'm not the scientist. I'm the eyes and the hands and the ears and the nose of the scientists. So while I'm doing all those experiments up there, I'm on the radio, and the scientists are on the ground, and they're helping talk me through everything. And there's nothing more exciting than hearing the voices of scientists that have been working on solving a problem for 10 years, and then you do an experiment that they've never been able to do before, and you discover something new, and you can hear them cheering in the control room, and you feel like you're something part of something really big. I'm not a scientist. I'm not an expert. Those guys are the ones with the PhDs, but I get the fortunate chance to be their hands. I'm the lab technician, if you will. Yeah.
What type of food can you take to the space, and how much food do you take with you?
We have lots of food up there. It's really like military food, so it's packaged and it's ready to eat. So like meals ready to eat, MREs that the military uses. It's very similar to that, but we've got additional options. So there's like 200 and there's over 200 different things that you can choose from. And there's appetizers and main courses and vegetables and meats and desserts and all of that. But when those cargo vehicles come up, your family can send you a care package. And so they can go to the grocery store and they can buy your favorite candy bar and put it in a box and they'll fly it up to you. And those are really special treats.
My name is Trevin Pratt. I'm in 4th grade from Hoxie Grade School. Is it hard to fall asleep in space? Is it hard to fall asleep in space?
I never slept better. So how do you sleep in space? We have a little crew quarters, so it's like a small little closet. If I stand up, my feet hit the ground, my head hits the top. If I put my arms out like this, my elbows would touch the sides of the wall. It's just kind of a little square. I can shut the door, turn out all the lights, and then just fall asleep. Floating. And I just float in my little crew quarters, and we're moving so slowly that when I bounce off the walls, it doesn't even wake me up. And it's the most comfortable sleep I've ever had because I'm not laying on a bed and I don't end up with a sore shoulder or sore back. It's just my body goes where it's supposed to go. And right before I fall asleep, because I turn out all the lights and I turn on a little music and I've got the right sleep environment, every now and then I'd see a flash of light. A little streak across my eye or a little starburst like little fireworks. It's like, what is that? It's the radiation from space hitting the back of my eye, my optic nerve, and causing flashes in my eye, reminding me that space is a really dangerous place, and we're not supposed to live there and work there, but we've been doing it successfully for a long time. Thanks for the question.
How do you launch the rocket ship?
How do we launch? So a rocket is a really big gas tank full of fuel, and we light it on fire. And then we point that the opposite direction of what we want to go. And for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, and that propels us forward. But we have to go from 0 to 17,500 miles an hour. A rocket starts pointed up, but almost as soon as it's off the launch pad, it starts to turn sideways. We're only 250 miles above the Earth when we finally get into orbit. So most of my effort is I go up and then I turn sideways and then I start to accelerate going horizontal, and that's how I get to orbit. Thank you.
I'm Ryan Bird. I'm in 4th grade from Hoxie Grade School. How long do you have to go to college to become an astronaut?
Training to become and preparing to become an astronaut is it's a lifelong endeavor. You got, like I said before, you find something that you're really passionate about and you do that really, really, really well. And then NASA will select astronauts from people that already have established careers. So you got to go to college, so that's 4 years at a minimum. And then we also require you to have a master's degree, and that's another 2 years at a minimum. So that's 6 years. That might seem like a long time. But when I look back at my career, I've spent the better part of 2 decades in school. So that's 20 years in school. By the time you graduate, you will have already done 12. You're always in school. You never stop learning. Whether you're in school or not, you never stop learning.
My name is Cameron Swaggart, and I am a 5th grader. How heavy is a spacesuit?
How heavy is a spacesuit? I think I got this one earlier. There's different types of spacesuits, though. So the one we do the spacewalk is really bulky. It's like 300 pounds. The one we launch in is more like wearing a flight suit. It's only 10, 20 pounds, so it's not very heavy. And it's only there if we need it in an emergency. So normally it doesn't inflate. Good question.
My name is Kellen Chrysler. I'm in 6th grade and I go to Hoxie Grade School. This is one of our questions. Was it hard to adjust to gravity on Earth after spending 6 months in zero gravity?
Was it hard to adjust? I mentioned that I was stronger when I landed, so I could walk, but I had no sense of balance. Inside your head, right now everybody in this room is using two things to determine which way's up and which way's down. Inside your head, your inner ear has little crystals, and they settle down on hairs inside your inner ear, and when they settle, that tells you which way's down. And so that's how I can close my eyes and not fall over, because my inner ear is saying this way's down, and now I can keep myself upright. If I open my eyes, I'm also using my visual cues to determine which way is up and down. When I go on orbit, I said everything floats. Well, those crystals float. So my inner ear is telling me all kinds of crazy stuff, and for a couple days, it can make you motion sick, but then after a while, your mind adapts and it stops listening to your inner ear. So then the only thing you're doing is using visual cues. So after a week on orbit, I could close my eyes and I could tuck myself into a ball, and my crew member could spin me around. And then they'd stop me, and then I'd open my eyes, and it was like I'd never spun before. Not like on the ground, like if you spin in a chair round and round and then you stop, all of a sudden you're dizzy and wobbly. No, I just stopped listening to my inner ear. My mind changed how it worked. And then when I got back to the ground, I had to do the opposite. So initially, if I closed my eyes, I'd just fall over. But then after, it seemed like every time I slept, my mind started to remember how it was supposed to work, and it adapted back. So I'm in my 40s, and my mind is changing the way that it's wired and working on a daily basis. So for everybody in here that is above the age of 20, and you think, okay, I'm done growing and it's all downhill from here, your body is constantly adapting to the world around you. And so you are a result of what you expose yourself to, whether you're 10 or 60. It's a great question.
Thank you.
My name is Isaac Gady, and I'm in 5th grade at Golden Plains Grade School. How much training or effort goes into being an astronaut?
How much? I could try to quantify how much I put into it, but I don't think that would do it justice, because I could just say it takes everything. It takes more than just me. It takes all the effort and investment and sacrifice of my family to let me go, to support me. All of those people in those pictures that you saw that train me and invest their lives in training astronauts, all the people that work in mission control that are there all day, every day, making sure that we're successful. It's just one of the most impressive things that humanity has done, the international effort that it takes to run the space station. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Davin Wade, and I'm a 6th grader for Hoxie Elementary School. My question is, what is the difference between entering space and re-entering the world as far as what you physically felt?
I'm going to talk about a different aspect. So I talked about the balance. Another one is you live inside of a tin can, if you will. I lived inside of this 6-bedroom house with my friends. And for everybody that was cooped up during COVID that can remember that isolation, you don't realize how many stimuli are in the environment around you, all the things that are going on in the environment around you. And so when you're in isolation, your mind gets used to absorbing all those inputs around you because it craves stimulus. And then when you get back down to earth, there's way too much stimulus, but your mind isn't used to ignoring it. And so there's a lot of just adapting to your mind trying to focus on the important things. And so it can be really exhausting and really overwhelming. And so there's a period of trying to reintegrate into everyday life. I can remember trying to drive after being down. I'd landed about 2 weeks, and then they said, okay, you're good to drive. You're not going to run into anything. And it was still just, there's so much going on with traffic that it could be overwhelming. After a while, you get back to usual, though. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Ruxin Armberger, and I'm in 5th grade from Golden Plains Elementary School. How does time go by? Does it seem faster, slower, or the same in space?
It depends on what you're doing. When I had the rocket failure, there were moments in there that lasted only a split second that felt like they were 20 minutes long. And then I didn't even realize I was weightless for 3 minutes. And it felt like 2 seconds. So time dilation depends on what you're doing. A spacewalk, I was in a spacesuit. I did 3 spacewalks, but each one, I was in the spacesuit for about 12 hours. The 4 hours before I got out the hatch seemed to last forever. But then once I was out there working, 6 hours, 7 hours went by extremely fast. So it just depends. It's kind of like things that are in, you experience every day. Some things drag on forever, and some things you wish they weren't over. Thank you.
When you got to the station, what was the first thing you did?
First thing I did is we were able to have a conference. So after I hugged the crewmates that were there, it was kind of an awkward situation because I was supposed to be in the opposite end of that hug. If my launch had been successful, the first one, then the crew that was there, I was supposed to greet. So it was a little bit of reverse. So I was able to hug the people that I was trying to for quite a while. So gave them a hug, then we went to the radio, and I was able to call down and talk to my family.
My name is Aubrey Dirks, and I'm a 5th grader at Hoxie. My question is, can you see constellations in a 360-degree view in space?
So I can see them at night. The sun's so bright that when the sun's out, it's kind of like during the day down here. It's just a dark sky because my eyes are too closed up because the sun's so bright. Unfortunately, the space station's windows face down. So I can only see the constellations around the edge of the Earth, and the Earth blocks most of what's on the other side. There was one instance where we had flipped the station so that I could look forward, and I was able to see even more. I'd love if they designed if they were up to me, they'd design a station where there was one room that was all glass and you could look above the station. It would be amazing. But unfortunately, we're limited on how many windows we've got up there. Thank you. Yes?
Did you ever get claustrophobic?
Did I ever get claustrophobic? No. Not something I've ever had a problem with. But I'll extend that question. Did I ever get scared of heights? Yes. There's nothing more terrifying than doing a spacewalk, and I'm working on the bottom of the space station, and I'm holding on with a handrail here, and I'm trying to use a screwdriver over here, and you look down, and my feet are dangling in open space, and below them, 250 miles is like Africa. And this hand starts to like squeeze so hard because I'm scared that I'm going to fall. Even though I know I'm floating, there's just something hardwired in me that's like I'm putting dents in the aluminum handrail from my squeeze. So yeah, you can still be a human and be an astronaut.
Mock, and I'm in 5th grade at Hoxie. My question is, what was your scariest moment on the International Space Station?
Scariest moment. There's lots of them. No, we spend so much time trying to prepare for all the different things that we need to do. We prepare for if something hits the station and causes all the atmosphere to escape, how do we protect ourselves? If we have a fire, if we spill something that's toxic on the inside, and we train for that over and over and over. And so then when the moments that are scary, you can lean on that training and put the scary aside, and you can focus on doing the things you need to do to protect yourself and your crewmates. And then you can deal with the scary stuff. So smoke alarms can be scary. When we lost power, it could be scary. Just doing a spacewalk could be scary. And it's okay to have those feelings. So after we do that stuff, I put those emotions aside as long as I can, and then we come back in, and then I share them with my teammates. I share them with my family. Yeah.
How long did it take to get your suit on for the spacewalk?
Spacewalk. It takes about 4 hours. It takes about 30 to 40 minutes to put the suit on. You can't put it on yourself. You have to have assistance from the person on the inside that's in charge of suiting everybody up. But then once we get the suit on, it takes another 4 hours roughly to try to get all of the nitrogen out of your system. Anybody scuba dive in the room? I know, it's not real popular here. I didn't start scuba diving until I was living in California. You've got nitrogen in your body. When you go to higher atmosphere, or when you go to a lower pressure, and that's what we do in a spacewalk, it's like we're working on the top of Mount Everest in terms of pressure. When you go up in altitude or down in pressure, nitrogen bubbles want to come out of your blood, and those nitrogen bubbles can get stuck in your blood vessels in your brain. They can cause all kinds of problems. They call it the bends. It can be in your joints. So we have to breathe pure oxygen for a period of time to try to get all of that nitrogen out of our system. Once that's done, then we can go outside and do our spacewalk. Spacewalks last about 7 hours, and then we come back in, and it takes another hour to get your suit off. And so by the end of the day, you've been in the suit about 12 hours. Inside the suit, all you do is breathe pure oxygen, and you've got 32 ounces of water in a drink bag. So it's effectively like running a marathon and somebody gave you a Camelback, and you do that for 12 hours. So it's pretty physically grueling. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Aubrey Carver. I am in 5th grade in Hoxie. My question is, what is your favorite food in space?
Favorite food in space? I've got a sweet tooth. Tastes change in space. Your heart is constantly trying to fight gravity on the ground, and so it's pushing blood harder to your brain than it is your feet. But then once you go into orbit, gravity's not pulling the blood to your feet. You're falling with your blood, so it's floating a little bit more. But your heart doesn't know that, so it's still pushing blood into your brain. So you have this sense of fullness, and it can affect the way that your sinuses and your tastes work, you know, how you smell things and taste things. And so people's tastes change up there. So I noticed that I really like spicy food even more on orbit because I could taste it. But I also have a sweet tooth. So there's a chocolate pudding cake that comes in a pouch that you can heat up. And it's like, 2,000 calories, but it's delicious.
How old were you when you decided to be an astronaut?
Two-part answer to that. The dream to become an astronaut, I was in 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade. I'd look up at the night sky and, hey, I want to explore. Then trying to, that was always a lifelong ambition, but like professionally, you can't start out by saying, hey, I want to be an astronaut, because they all do something else. So I wanted to figure out what I wanted to do. I liked breaking things, putting them back together. I wanted to be an engineer. And so that led me to, hey, let me go to the Air Force Academy and study rockets and satellites and serve my country. And then at some point, after I graduated the academy, I found out about flight tests. And I got involved with flight tests, working with jets and getting to fly in them and test them or on the ground. And then I realized that is something that I'm good at, and I really enjoy it, and it's very similar to what we do down at NASA. And then that's when it became a professional ambition. So it's kind of after college, after I had kind of my feet under me professionally, and then I said, hey, yeah, those two align, I'm gonna go after it. It didn't happen overnight. I went to test pilot school. I first applied to be an astronaut, and then I applied, I got rejected. I applied 5 years later, got rejected. Finally applied a 3rd time and got accepted. So it took me 10 years and 3 applications to get accepted into the astronaut corps. So if somebody says no, don't take the first no for the final answer. Just keep working and don't give up on your dreams.
My name is Isaac Jinkola, and I'm a 5th grader at Hoxie. My question is what is your favorite exercise to do on the International Space Station?
Favorite exercise? I really enjoy running on the ground, but up there I didn't enjoy it so much just because of the way that harness pulls down on you. It's like running with a 30-pound backpack on. It's not real comfortable. On the ground, I didn't enjoy lifting weights as much, but up there when I got to lift weights, you know, I'd sit there and do bench press, and I don't know if you saw in the video, but then the window down to the earth, I could look out over my feet while I'm doing bench press and watch the earth underneath me, and so that was pretty fun. Yes?
When on the ISS, is it possible to get vitamin D from the sun?
It's limited because we don't have a lot of windows, so we take vitamin D. We're up there for 7 months, so we're taking supplements, vitamin supplements, to try to help us out. But yeah, I came back and I was completely pasty white because I hadn't seen like direct sunlight in a long time.
Hi, my name is Kenzie Nandorf. I am in 5th grade in Hoxie. How do you communicate with astronauts from different countries who speak different languages at the International Space Station?
Yeah, I kind of talked about this earlier. So to fly on the space station, you have to know English and Russian to a certain level of proficiency. So when I showed up at NASA, the first class I started doing was Russian language training, and I would do 2 lessons a week, every week, for the next 4 years. And now I'm down to 1 lesson a week, but I still do it every week. I have my Russian tutor, and Irina and I chat for about an hour and a half once a week, continuing to try to improve and maintain my language. So it's tough, but you have to learn those too. Now imagine if you're Japanese and you speak Japanese. Now you have to learn English and Russian. Those I'm so impressed by our international partners because of everything that they learn. You guys have to leave to eat lunch. Enjoy. Take care. Okay, question.
How long, on average, does it take for plants to grow on the ISS?
Plants to grow on an ISS, it takes about the same amount of time as it does here on the ground. We're using lights to try to simulate normal day-night cycles for plants. We kind of mess with those a little bit to see if we can improve them, and then watering cycles. So I was able to grow lettuce within, you know, from seeds to consuming something over the course of about 6 weeks.
My name is Riley Purdy. I'm a 6th grader at Hoxie Grade School, and my question is, have you ever gotten sick on the space station? And if you have, what did you do?
People get sick. Before everybody was into quarantining on the ground because of COVID, we would quarantine routinely before launches. That's just the way we've been doing things since the beginning of the space program. So 2 weeks prior to launching into space, you go into quarantine so that you try not to take any viruses or nasty bugs up to the space station and get the people that are up there sick. So we try to prevent it. If you do get sick, then on board we have a pharmacy, and we have doctors that are on the ground. Some of my astronaut colleagues, teammates, are doctors, but we also get medical training. So I'm trained not only on how to go to the pharmacy and get the right medicine out, I'm also trained on how to draw blood and put an IV in, or to give somebody stitches, or if they have a cavity, how can I temporarily fill the cavity, or how do I pull a tooth? All of those things that you wouldn't think about as part of astronaut training, we have to be able to do because it's just us up there. Hello.
Hi, Nick.
How are you?
Good. So our either freshman or sophomore year of school, our debate team debated SETI, which was a search for extraterrestrial intelligence. So did you come to any conclusions 30 years later?
Thank you. So that's NASA's mission, is to go out and find the answers to the really big questions. Are we alone? Is there life on Mars? Is there life out there? It's pretty moving to be able to see the depths of the universe kind of unveiled as your eyes adjust to nighttime up there. There's just so much out there. It boggles my mind how we could be the only little precious spot in all of that. Have I found little green men or aliens? No. Am I looking? Yes. NASA's looking tirelessly. It just seems, it'd be pretty sad if we were it. Thank you for the question.
What was your favorite activity to do on the space station?
Favorite activity. So you saw one of them. It was look out the window. You saw a picture of the other, which was to have dinner with my crew and kind of get to bond and learn each other. Getting to interact with people on the ground and try to share that experience, whether I was on the station or even now, one of the most fulfilling things that I do is share that experience. If I could take every one of you up there, I would. It has such a profound impact on your ability to see the world around you and how you fit into it, that if we could get more people into space, we'd all be better off for it. So short of that, I just want to share what it's like, right? And so being able to call down, whether it was on ham radio and talking to people over the radio or doing live downlinks with the Cosmosphere, I mean, those were all just really fun things to do. Thank you. Okay, what's your question? You're holding the mic. You didn't know you were going to have to ask one. Go ahead.
I heard it all.
That's it? You sure? I'll come back to you. No one gets off the... No, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to think about it. Okay.
What was your favorite spacewalk?
Favorite spacewalk? That's like asking a parent, which is your favorite kid? It's a loaded question. Every one of them, the reason I enjoy spacewalks is because you can feel like you're you're a little mechanism in this giant machine, and you can feel it. You know that the team on the ground is working through everything that's going on, and you know what each of those people's responsibilities are, and then to go out there and to do something and try to strive for perfection, and then to run into obstacles and then figure out together how to get around those obstacles. It's getting lost in that sense of being part of this bigger team that made them so fulfilling. Everybody tends to focus on the person doing the spacewalk. There are hundreds of people on the ground that are supporting them making that happen, and it was being part of that team that made them so special. Now, did I steal 30 seconds to enjoy the view? Absolutely, because why wouldn't you? But it was that sense of team that really made things special. And so I think when I look back and I reflect on my career, those are the things, those are the accomplishments that I am most proud of and I find the most enjoyment in, is when I'm able to lose myself as part of something bigger than myself. Thank you. Back to you.
Everything you learned in high school, do you think it helped you while you were in space?
Yes, is the short answer. So let's talk about high school. I'm going to come to you next, by the way. Okay, you saw it coming. We're all human. We make mistakes. I made mistakes on the space station, and you try to recover from those mistakes. I made mistakes in high school. Did I get in trouble when I was in high school? Yes. Right? You try things, you fail, you make mistakes, you get in trouble, you're learning, but now's the time to do it. And now is the time to figure out what you're passionate about, and experimenting and trying to figure out what do I want to do with my life, and finding that sense of purpose. This is the time to do it. And there's no better place to do it than right here. I go and I talk to lots of schools. Some of them, we can fit the entire school system into an auditorium. Some of them, I can fit half of one class into a 1,000-person auditorium. I think you don't realize how much opportunity you have here to explore and to experiment. I'm not asking every one of you to pick the one sport that you want to try out for and then dedicate your entire time in school trying to make the varsity team in that one sport. Here, I played everything that I wanted to play. I got to do all the different clubs that I wanted to do. I got to experiment, and you get to do that here because you're small. And you get to interact in small teams, and it's just something special about coming from a small place. And I think that's overlooked in terms of, it's easy to be in your seat and go, oh, we're small, we don't have these things. But there's a flip side to that, which is you're small and you have so many opportunities to explore. So what did I learn here? I learned about who I was and who I wanted to become, and that's trial and error, and I encourage all of you to take the time now to figure that out, whether you're 10 or whether you're 60. Okay.
What do you believe your biggest achievement is?
Biggest achievement. A husband and father. That's where it starts. Everybody's got to find the thing that motivates them and helps them go through, and there's nothing that you accomplish on your own. That starts with family. That starts with, what my mom and dad taught me when I was growing up, and it continues with what my sons continually teach me about my failings. So it's find what motivates you. Yeah, thanks. No other questions? Are we way out of time? How are we doing on time?
Well, really.
Are we good?
Do you want to do some picture signing?
Okay. Okay. So if you're interested, okay, it is not, you don't feel compelled, but if you're interested, I'm going to stand up here. We're going to queue up if you would like. If you want to come down, take a selfie, I've got some photos that I can sign, but only if you're interested. But you're going to have to be patient with me, because if there are a lot of people, it's going to take a lot of time. I'll try to work through everybody. I'll be up here, but thank you so much for your attention. I hope you're able to find something you can take away from this.